Have you ever smiled just because it was expected? Not because you felt it, but because not smiling would have felt rude? Have you ever praised someone just to avoid awkwardness? Or to keep the peace? Now, think for a second. How many people do you know who would act completely different if no one were watching? Diogenes once walked through the streets of Athens in broad daylight, holding a lantern. When asked what he was doing, he'd say, "I'm looking for an honest man." Spoiler, he never found one. And maybe that says more about us than about him. Maybe honesty, real, raw, unfiltered honesty, has become something people either fear or fake. We live in a world full of smiles that don't mean happiness, compliments that hide agendas, gestures of kindness that are more about performance than sincerity. And the scariest part? We've gotten used to it. We've started calling fake smiles politeness. We confuse convenience for empathy. We label avoidance as diplomacy. And all the while, something beneath it all keeps tugging at us. That low hum of discomfort. That quiet, persistent feeling that something's off. Like we're all stuck in some weird play, following a script none of us believes in anymore. And still, we keep clapping. Diogenes, the old cynic, refused to be part of that performance. He didn't just reject the rules, he mocked them. He lived outside the lines society drew and, for that reason, might have seen things more clearly than the rest. He wasn't trying to destroy the world. He was trying to wake it up. And this video isn't really about him. It's about you. About all the silent deals you make just to be accepted. The ways you betray yourself to seem like a good person, even when everything inside you wants to scream the opposite. We're going to talk about the exhaustion of living in a world where kindness is a performance and truth is treated like a threat. Because let's be honest, not all evil looks like evil. Sometimes it hides behind a smile. Sometimes it sounds like a compliment. Sometimes it's the person who's too nice. You probably know that person. Always agreeable. Always supportive. Never confronts. Never disagrees. And yet, there's something about them that feels off. That's because cruelty doesn't always come with a frown. These days, it often wears a grin. And here's the hard truth. We've all done it. We've all played that game. We've faked friendships. Lied to keep someone's approval. Chosen applause over authenticity. And that, maybe, is the most painful realization. That dishonesty has become a survival skill. But what if there's still something to learn from Diogenes? What if there's still value in brutal truth, especially in a world that's addicted to comfort? What if the first real step toward being okay is to stop pretending you're okay? Because here's the thing. Not all scripts are worth memorizing. Not all roles are worth playing. And not all smiles are real. Imagine this for a second. A stage. The curtains open. Lights on. The audience is filled with people you know, your parents, your coworkers, your partner. Everyone's got their lines. Their masks. Their carefully rehearsed gestures. The name of the play? Life in Society. And everyone's fighting for the same lead role. The good person. Diogenes hated that theater. To him, the greatest betrayal of truth wasn't lying. It was pretending to be kind. Because when kindness becomes an obligation, it stops being a virtue. It becomes a strategy. Have you noticed how people behave when they know they're being watched? It's like a switch flips. The tone softens. The words become polished. The edges are smoothed out. But when no one's looking, what's left? Who's still kind? Who still holds the door, helps someone out, avoids gossip, tells the truth? Diogenes had a word for this moral cowardice. And he may have had a point. Because when kindness is performative, it's more dangerous than open cruelty. Why? Because at least you can recognize cruelty. But fake kindness? It slides under the radar. It manipulates. It charms. It embraces you, and then poisons you with a smile. Here's a phrase I repeat to myself like a shield. Beware of those who seem too good. They often hide the deepest poison. And maybe, just maybe, you've tasted that poison too. You've felt the sting of a compliment that wasn't really a compliment. The warmth of someone's praise. Right before they turned around and judged you in silence. This is the era we live in. A time when looking good matters more than being good. A time when the algorithm rewards people who post about causes they don't understand, cry on camera, but don't pick up the phone when a real friend is suffering. Empathy is now a currency. Kindness is a brand. And why do we play along? Because we want to be liked. We want to be loved. We're afraid that if we show who we really are, no one will stick around. So we edit ourselves. We shrink. We smile. We become easy to digest, easy to like, but also easy to forget. Diogenes didn't play that game. He didn't just speak truth, he lived it. He didn't try to scandalize. He tried to reveal. He ate off the ground. He did things that society called shameful. Why? Because he wanted to show how ridiculous the performance had become, how fake our manners were, how much effort we put into seeming civil, when beneath it we're driven by instinct, ego, and fear. And here's the real tragedy. Forced kindness is a form of spiritual amputation. It's cutting off parts of yourself just to fit into a costume that was never made for you in the first place. Ever wonder why social gatherings drain you so much? Why you come home after a party and feel empty, even though you smiled the whole time? Maybe it's because you spent the evening acting, laughing when you didn't find it funny, agreeing to avoid conflict, saying it's all good when everything inside you was falling apart. You acted, and no one even clapped. There's something strangely beautiful about admitting that sometimes your kindness isn't real, that you've praised people out of fear, that you've swallowed truths just to keep a relationship alive. Don't hate yourself for that. We've all done it. But seeing it clearly, that's step one to leaving the stage. Diogenes didn't reject kindness. He rejected performance. He believed in being good when no one's watching, in telling the truth even if it hurts, in loving with intensity, even when it's messy and hard. The good person he searched for with his lamp. Maybe they didn't exist. Or maybe they were just hiding, too scared to come out in a world that punishes truth and rewards appearances. But deep down, we all know to be truly good, you have to be free. And freedom, my friend, is the hardest role to play. There's something disturbingly clever about how we're taught to lie. Not the obvious lies, the ones you can spot, but the quiet ones, the half-truths, the careful silences, the well-timed compliments that aren't really about the other person, but about protecting yourself from an uncomfortable moment. We live in a time where telling the truth can feel like breaking the law, not because it's wrong, but because it's inconvenient. Have you noticed? People don't get upset about what you said. They get upset about how you said it. You could have worded it better. That wasn't the right time. Where's your empathy? But let's be real, who gets to decide what the right time is for truth? Who made the rulebook on when and how we're allowed to be honest? The truth is, sometimes truth doesn't have a nice way of being delivered. It's not a gift wrapped in ribbons. It's a stone. And no matter how carefully you throw it, someone's going to feel it hit. Diogenes understood that. He knew that real truth, the kind that wakes people up, isn't cute. It doesn't knock gently, kicks the door down. And people don't like that, because waking up from a dream, even a bad one, is still uncomfortable. He didn't want to sugarcoat anything. He didn't want to be liked. He wanted to rattle people, because sometimes the only way to get someone to see is to shake their world a little. And let's be honest, truth isn't the villain here. It's the silence that follows a lie. It's the slow rot that happens when you bite your tongue over and over. It's the inner scream you bury beneath a forced smile. We've become so polite, so afraid of offense, that we'd rather get sick than say what needs to be said. We'd rather keep fragile friendships than speak the truth and risk rupture. We sacrifice ourselves on the altar of keeping the peace. But that peace is fake, is fragile, and eventually it breaks anyway. Have you ever tried being fully honest with someone you love? No filters, no sugar, just truth. If you have, you know exactly what happens. The air gets heavy. I shift. There's a long silence, maybe even some tears, because we've been conditioned to believe that truth equals cruelty. That if you really love someone, you'll protect them from harshness. But Diogenes had a different definition of love. He believed that real care means saying what no one else will, even if it hurts, even if it gets you hated. Because protecting someone from the truth isn't kindness, it's fear. He insulted philosophers. He mocked rulers. He pointed a middle finger at society's expectations, not because he enjoyed the chaos, but because he refused to be part of the grand illusion. He wouldn't applaud a lie just to be accepted by the crowd. And maybe that's what we need more of. People willing to hold up the mirror and say, "Look, this is what I see. It's not pretty, but it's real." Because we live in a world obsessed with appearances. And we've started to confuse niceness with goodness. But they're not the same. Nice is easy. Nice is safe. Nice doesn't challenge anything. Goodness? Goodness tells the truth. Even when it costs you. Even when it gets messy. Diogenes once said, "If I could give the world a gift, it would be a mirror that shows everything exactly as it is. No filters, no flattery." That's what honesty really is. A mirror. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. But it's also freeing. Because once you see clearly, you can't go back to pretending. But the truth? It scares people. So we wrap everything in softness. We pad every criticism with compliments. We choose comforting lies over painful clarity. And in doing so, we become sick. Spiritually, emotionally, sometimes even physically. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, "Why didn't I just say what I meant? Why did I hold back? Why did I let that moment pass?" Maybe because deep down you knew the truth would shake something. It might end the friendship. It might start an argument. It might make someone see you differently. But sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. We don't need more agreeable people. We need people with spines. People who are willing to risk being misunderstood for the sake of being real. Diogenes didn't want to be liked. He wanted to liberate. And sometimes, liberation begins with discomfort. We all have those moments where we know someone is lying to themselves, where we see someone heading towards self-destruction, where we feel someone is drowning under their own mask. And still we stay quiet, because we're afraid of being the bad guy. But here's the paradox. Sometimes the bad guy is the only one telling the truth. I once told someone close to me a truth they didn't want to hear. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because watching them lie to themselves was worse. They hated me for it. Said I was cruel, cold, self-righteous. And maybe I was. But 2 years later they came back. With different eyes. A different story. A different strength. They said, "Thank you." And that moment reminded me. Sometimes the wound created by truth is the only one that truly heals. Truth cuts. But lies rot. You have to choose. Because in a world addicted to pretending, the most radical act of love might just be saying, "I see you, the real you, and I'm not afraid." But here's the kicker. The biggest obstacle isn't always outside. It's not your boss, or your friend, or your partner. It's you. It's your fear. Your need for approval. That constant, nagging voice in your head asking, "What will people think?" That voice is a leash. You can smile. You can succeed. You can love. But only within a safe distance. Always measuring. Always filtering. Always performing. And performing is exhausting. Diogenes chose a different path. The hardest one. The one without applause. Without rewards. But with something most people never find, freedom. He didn't try to fit into the world. He let the world see a man who simply couldn't be tamed. He wore rags, slept in barrels, laughed at kings. Not because he hated people, but because he saw through the illusion. He saw that most of us are trapped, not by others but by our own desire to be liked. And that's the invisible prison. Not made of bars, but made of approval. Modern society doesn't need to lock you up. It just dangles enough carrots. Likes, compliments, raises, followers, and you'll do the rest. You'll trade pieces of yourself for a little bit of applause. But the real question is, how many pieces have you already traded? How many versions of yourself have you abandoned to be accepted? Freedom isn't free. Costs something. You might lose friends. You might burn bridges. You might never be invited back to that party. But what you gain is something no one can give you. The ability to breathe without pretending. And yeah, it might feel lonely at first. Diogenes was in constant mourning. Mourning for the things he could have had if he just played the game. But he was free. free from expectations, free from appearances, free from himself. And that's rare. Now let's talk about something that hits even deeper, the masks we wear. Every day, without even thinking, we stack on layers of approval seeking. From the way we dress to the tone of our voice, to the fake laugh we use at a coworker's bad joke, we're always adjusting, editing ourselves. But here's the question. Who are we trying to please? That group of friends who like us as long as we never disagree. That boss who smiles when we nod but frowns when we speak up? That distant cousin who praises us for being so well-behaved? We've become so desperate to be accepted that we've forgotten what it feels like to be real. Diogenes chose a life most people would run from. He walked around barefoot, unwashed, half-naked, rejecting money, comfort, even praise. Not because he wanted to suffer, but because he refused to trade his soul for approval. He wasn't some grumpy hermit. He was free. He didn't need validation. He didn't fear rejection. He didn't dress to impress or speak to be admired. He simply was. Can you imagine what that feels like? To wake up and not have to manage a persona? To move through the world without constantly editing yourself for the people around you? That kind of freedom scares people, because it shows just how trapped the rest of us are. Diogenes didn't need a house. He wasn't owned by comfort. He didn't need luxury clothes. He wasn't shackled to appearance. He didn't need flattery. He wasn't scared of solitude. But what about us? We chase compliments like oxygen. We stay in relationships that hollow us out. We stay quiet to keep the peace. We say yes when we're screaming no inside. All to keep the illusion alive. The illusion of being a good person. But here's a thought. What if that child version of you, the one who used to scream, cry, question, get messy, what if she was the realest you've ever been? And everything since then, be polite. Don't interrupt. Say thank you. Don't upset anyone. What if all of that was just training you to perform? Now that child lives inside an elegant cage we call adulthood. She doesn't talk too loud anymore. She doesn't ask uncomfortable questions. She doesn't take up too much space. She's been taught to be pleasant, polished, safe. But maybe what she really wanted was freedom. That's what Diogenes understood better than anyone. That pretending to be good is easy. Being real is the hard part. He lived like a dog. Literally. Because dogs don't pretend. They don't care if you think they're polite. They bark when threatened. They wag when happy. They don't wear masks. They don't lie to be liked. They are what they are. And that's why he admired them so deeply. Because they reminded him of something that humanity had forgotten. Authenticity. The kind of freedom Diogenes lived wasn't chaos. It was truth. Unfiltered, unedited, and yes, deeply uncomfortable. Because he wasn't afraid to reveal just how much we've buried ourselves under expectations. He showed us that we've been trained to fit into a system where kindness is currency, approval is the prize, and performance is survival. But what if we stopped performing? Would the world fall apart? Or would we finally be able to breathe? And here's something you may not want to hear. Real freedom doesn't come from breaking all the rules. It comes from choosing which ones are worth following. Maybe total freedom doesn't exist. Maybe we'll always be navigating some kind of social structure. But we can choose to participate with awareness. We can choose to wear the mask when necessary, but know it's a mask. We don't have to forget who we are beneath it. That's the difference between being a puppet and being a player. And that brings us to the final, most brutal question. Do you want to be free? Or do you want to be loved? It's so easy to look like a good person. Smile. Say please and thank you. Post inspiring quotes. Avoid swearing. Tell your kids everything's fine, even when it's not. That's all part of the performance. But being good? That's different. Being good is saying no when everyone expects a yes. It's standing up for someone who's hated, because it's the right thing to do. It's walking away from people who praise you but suffocate your truth. It's saying the thing no one wants to hear because silence would be worse. Diogenes didn't care about being liked. He cared about being honest. And yeah, it made him seem harsh, even cruel. But for the few who could handle it, his truth was liberation. His brutality was a strange kind of love. Because true kindness isn't gentle. It's real. It holds up the mirror. It strips away the delusions. It says, "You're lying to yourself, and I won't let you." And that's where the world is broken right now. Kindness has become a product, a brand, something we perform, not something we live. We wear it like a costume, hoping it'll protect us, hoping it'll make us lovable. But real kindness? It doesn't care how it looks. It doesn't ask for applause. It wounds when it needs to, and heals without anyone watching. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is destroy someone's illusion. You've been there, haven't you? You've bitten your tongue when you should have spoken. You've kept the peace, even though the silence was killing you. You've watched someone spiral and said nothing, because you didn't want to seem negative. But deep down, you knew. You knew the truth could have saved them, or at least shaken them awake. And the question isn't whether you'll be punished for being honest. The question is, are you willing to live with yourself if you're not? We reward the people who seem kind, the ones who always smile, who never raise their voice, who never ruffle feathers. But those aren't always the good people. Sometimes they're just the best actors. Being a good person means being willing to lose things, comfort, popularity, relationships, because you chose truth over performance. Diogenes didn't leave behind wealth or legacy or fame. What he left was a challenge, a mirror, a dare, to have the guts to be naked in a world full of costumes, to be misunderstood, disliked, even hated for the sake of something real. So here's where I'll leave you. You don't have to light a lantern and walk through the city. You don't have to live in a barrel or bark like a dog. But you do have a choice. Every time you're tempted to perform, you can choose to be real instead. Every time you want to be liked, you can ask yourself if being liked is worth losing yourself. Because in the end, the question isn't whether people love the version of you they see. It's whether you can live with the version of yourself you've buried to earn their love. That's the question. That's the fire Diogenes lit. And maybe, just maybe, it's still burning inside you. Now, before you go, if any part of this made you feel something, if it stirred something uncomfortable but true, consider checking the link in the description. There's a full breakdown of a self-transformation model I've been developing, a fusion of neuroscience, practical philosophy, and honest discipline. It's not for everyone, but if you're tired of pretending and ready to build real clarity and direction, it might be for you. If this message struck a nerve, subscribe, share it, or just sit with it for a while. Sometimes the truth doesn't need a reaction. Sometimes it just needs to exist. Thanks for being here. And remember, in a world addicted to appearances, the most radical thing you can do is be real.